The neighborhood had always been quiet, polished, and tightly controlled by its homeowners association. Streets lined with identical mailboxes, neatly trimmed hedges, and beige-painted homes gave the place a uniform look. It was the kind of community that marketed itself as exclusive and prestigious, but beneath the surface, it was little more than a cage of petty regulations and watchful eyes. Every crack in the pavement was monitored, every car in a driveway was scrutinized, and every blade of grass was expected to grow at the same measured length. The Homeowners Association thrived on control. It wasn't about improving the neighborhood as much as it was about maintaining power. Members of the board treated their positions like royalty, issuing warnings and fines with a self-righteous sense of purpose. For years, residents had silently complied, grumbling under their breath but never daring to rebel. Until one December, when something small but symbolic pushed the system toward collapse: Christmas lights. In most neighborhoods, Christmas decorations were part of the culture. Lights strung along rooftops, trees wrapped in sparkling ribbons, and inflatable Santas waving in front yards were traditions families shared with pride. But here, the HOA saw it differently. They considered lights to be visual clutter and a disturbance to the harmony of the community. Official letters arrived each year, reminding residents that holiday decor was strictly prohibited. Only a single, non-illuminated wreath on the door was allowed, nothing more. For many, it was disappointing but tolerable. Parents quietly told their children that they could go see lights in other neighborhoods. Some whispered about how much they missed the joy of glowing streets in December. Yet, no one ever fought back. It seemed too dangerous, too costly to challenge the board. That year, however, one homeowner decided enough was enough. He was not the type to make trouble. For years, he had abided by every HOA letter, every demand for compliance. His lawn was neatly trimmed, his house painted the approved beige, and his garbage cans hidden exactly where the guidelines required. But as winter approached, he felt the weight of how sterile the community had become. He remembered the excitement of childhood, seeing streets blazing with light, the warmth of red and green hues filling the night. He thought of families who longed for that joy, of children who never knew the wonder of holiday magic because of the board's obsession with control. When the HOA issued their seasonal reminder, sternly stating that decorations of any kind were forbidden, he decided that this would be the line he refused to cross. It wasn't about defiance for the sake of rebellion. It was about reclaiming a sense of freedom in a place where freedom had been quietly drained. He began planning in secret. What started as an idea to put up a few strands of lights quickly evolved into something much larger. He realized that a small gesture would be easy for the board to squash. A few lights could be taken down after a warning. But if he went all in, if he built something bigger, brighter, and more extravagant than anyone had ever seen, it would be impossible to ignore. And so the concept was born. If the HOA wanted darkness, he would give them blinding light. If they wanted control, he would unleash chaos. His house would not simply have decorations. It would transform into an overwhelming display that rivaled Times Square. In early November, he began collecting supplies. Truckloads of lights arrived at his home, tens of thousands of LED strands in every color imaginable. Giant displays of reindeer, snowmen, candy canes, and Santa's sleigh were delivered. Massive speakers for music, projectors for animations, and programmable control boxes for synchronized light shows were quietly stacked in his garage. He kept everything hidden, working late at night when board members were asleep. Neighbors noticed deliveries, but he brushed them off as renovations or storage. No one suspected the scale of what was coming. The plan was meticulous. Every inch of his roofline would be outlined in white. His trees would be wrapped from root to tip in glowing spirals. The lawn would hold towering inflatables, glowing arches, and illuminated figures. A massive digital screen would project holiday animations, while music boomed through perfectly tuned speakers. This wasn't a simple act of rebellion. It was a calculated assault on the suffocating atmosphere the HOA had created. He knew there would be consequences, fines, threats, maybe even lawsuits. But he also knew that once the lights turned on, it would no longer just be his fight. The display would capture the attention of everyone in the neighborhood. It would ignite something that the HOA had spent years trying to smother: community spirit. As the first week of December arrived, his preparations neared completion. Wires snaked across the property like veins. Ladders leaned against walls. Storage boxes filled with bulbs and ornaments covered the garage. He worked tirelessly, driven by both determination and the thrill of rebellion. By the second week, whispers began spreading. Neighbors saw glimpses of lights being tested in the evening. Flashes of red and green shimmered through windows. Children walking home from school spotted inflatables deflated on the lawn. The rumors reached the HOA board quickly, and their panic was immediate. They sent a formal letter threatening fines if unauthorized decorations were erected. The letter was ignored. When warnings failed, board members began visiting in person, circling the property and taking photos. They muttered among themselves, pointing at wires and boxes. Yet even as they threatened consequences, they realized something chilling. They had never encountered defiance on this scale. Most residents cowered at the first sign of trouble. But here was someone not only resisting but escalating. The HOA grew restless. They drafted fines, discussed legal action, and plotted emergency meetings. But time was against them. Each day, closer to December 15th, more lights appeared. Strings stretched across trees, glowing ornaments hung from branches, and structures rose in the yard. It was no longer a secret project. It was a spectacle in the making. Then came the night that changed everything. On December 15th, the homeowner flipped the final switch. A surge of electricity coursed through the property, and the house exploded in color. The roofline burned with sharp white light, every tree sparkled with vibrant ribbons, and the lawn erupted with glowing figures. Music thundered, synchronized to the flashing bulbs. Projected snowflakes danced across walls, while towering inflatables waved in the night. The quiet beige neighborhood had been shattered in an instant. It was no longer just a street of identical houses. It was Times Square dropped in the middle of suburbia. Neighbors poured out of their homes, stunned by the sight. Children squealed in delight, running to the sidewalk to watch the spectacle. Cars slowed to a crawl. Headlights dimmed as drivers stared in disbelief. Word spread within hours, and soon families from surrounding neighborhoods drove in just to witness the lights. But not everyone was pleased. Across the street, HOA board members stood frozen, their faces twisted with rage. They had fought for years to keep the neighborhood sterile and uniform, and now one house had undone it all with a single act of defiance. The lights blazed into the night, music pulsed through the air, and the neighborhood transformed into a carnival. For the first time in years, residents smiled, laughed, and gathered outside together. It was joyous, chaotic, and unforgettable. But beneath the laughter and wonder, a storm was brewing. The HOA would not let this rebellion go unpunished. The homeowner knew this was only the beginning. The lights had gone on, and now the real battle was about to start. The night the lights first blazed across the quiet neighborhood became a turning point that no one could forget. For many residents, it was magic, something they had been secretly craving after years of beige monotony. But for the HOA board, it was a declaration of war. The spectacle disrupted everything they had worked to control. Streets once empty after sundown were now packed with families strolling by, pointing at the glowing house with wide smiles. Cars lined the roads, slowing to admire the display, their red brake lights flickering in sync with the shimmering decorations. Children squealed in excitement, and laughter echoed where silence had once been law. But as joy spread, anger festered in the board members' hearts. They saw the house not as a celebration, but as an infection, one that threatened to unravel their grip over the neighborhood. Their carefully written rulebook, their strict letters, their endless warnings, none of it mattered anymore. With a single flip of a switch, one homeowner had revealed how powerless they truly were. By the next morning, the board gathered in an emergency meeting. They met in the home of their president, a woman known for her iron fist and relentless enforcement of every guideline. She had spent years building a reputation as the neighborhood's self-proclaimed guardian, ensuring that every mailbox, hedge, and shutter fell in line with her vision of order. And now, in her eyes, this one house had humiliated her. The meeting was tense, with members venting about unauthorized decorations, traffic congestion, and potential safety hazards. But beneath the excuses lay a deeper truth. They were furious because their authority had been challenged publicly. They drafted letters threatening thousands of dollars in fines. They warned that failure to comply would result in legal action. They even considered hiring private security to control traffic and intimidate visitors. The president insisted this was not about lights, but about principle. If they allowed one act of rebellion, others would follow. And if others followed, the HOA's rulebook would become worthless. Meanwhile, the homeowner continued to expand his display. He anticipated resistance, but instead of retreating, he doubled down. More inflatables appeared, glowing tunnels lined the walkway, and the music system was upgraded with even louder speakers. Each night, the show grew larger, brighter, and bolder. The board's threats arrived daily. First a warning letter, then a fine. Soon after, threats of legal action. But something unexpected began happening. The letters that once intimidated residents now seemed laughable. Neighbors began quietly sharing their support, stopping by to compliment the lights. Families thanked the homeowner for bringing joy back into the community. Even those who had once feared the board's power now realized that the HOA wasn't as unstoppable as it seemed. Crowds grew. What began as a neighborhood spectacle turned into a citywide attraction. Cars from other districts filled the roads, creating traffic jams near the entrance of the community. Social media posts spread, labeling it the house that defied the HOA. Videos of the synchronized light shows went viral, racking up millions of views. Local news outlets caught wind of the story, sending reporters to cover the feud. The board was furious. Their once private dominion was now being scrutinized by the public. Strangers were mocking them online, calling them joyless tyrants. Comment sections overflowed with people celebrating the homeowner's rebellion and ridiculing the board's obsession with control. The president, humiliated by the attention, launched her most aggressive attack yet. She ordered citations for excessive use of electricity, disturbing the peace and blocking emergency vehicles due to parked cars. She called local authorities, hoping to shut the display down under claims of safety violations. For days, she campaigned tirelessly to portray the homeowner as reckless and dangerous. But her efforts backfired. City inspectors visited the property, only to find that the homeowner had meticulously ensured everything was within code. Electrical systems were properly installed, traffic was managed by volunteers, and walkways were kept clear. Every loophole the board tried to exploit had been sealed shut. The more they attacked, the more the community rallied around the lights. Neighbors began donating decorations of their own, adding to the spectacle. Volunteers helped direct traffic, hand out hot chocolate, and manage the growing crowds. What had started as one man's rebellion was now a community festival, united against the board's suffocating control. The board's frustration turned personal. They began targeting the homeowner directly, accusing him of lowering property values and embarrassing the neighborhood. They spread rumors, whispered lies, and tried to isolate him socially. But the efforts fell flat. Instead of turning people against him, their pettiness only revealed their desperation. By mid-December, the situation had spiraled beyond their control. The board was drowning in complaints, not from residents, but from outsiders flooding the neighborhood to see the lights. The traffic, the laughter, the music, all of it clashed violently with the sterile silence they had spent years enforcing. To them, this was chaos. To everyone else, it was joy. Desperate, the president drafted an ultimatum. She threatened to take the homeowner to court, demanding immediate removal of the lights or face financial ruin. She believed the threat of costly litigation would finally break his spirit. But what she didn't realize was that the homeowner was no longer alone in this battle. By now, the entire community stood behind him. Neighbors offered to help pay legal fees. Online supporters raised funds, eager to see the fight continue. Local businesses even stepped in, sponsoring the display as free advertising. The HOA, once feared as untouchable, now looked powerless. Their threats seemed hollow, their authority mocked, and yet, as Christmas drew closer, their determination hardened. They could not afford to lose. If the lights remained, their power was gone forever. The board made one last drastic decision. They would attempt to shut down the display by force, using every legal and financial weapon at their disposal. They believed that breaking the homeowner would scare others back into submission. But what they didn't realize was that the battle had already shifted. It was no longer about one man's lights. It was about freedom, joy, and the spirit of community. And as Christmas Eve approached, the stage was set for the final showdown between one house of light and a board of darkness. Christmas Eve arrived like a storm that had been building for weeks. The once quiet neighborhood, once known for its beige sameness, had transformed into a spectacle that drew hundreds each night. Families bundled in coats, sipping cocoa, gathered on sidewalks to marvel at the glowing house. Cars lined the streets, their headlights blending into the synchronized show. News crews set up cameras, capturing what had become a citywide sensation. But beneath the laughter and music, tension simmered. The HOA board had been humiliated at every turn. Their letters ignored, their fines mocked, their authority ridiculed. Every attempt to stop the lights had failed, and now they believed they had only one chance left. They had prepared their final strike, a sweeping legal action that would accuse the homeowner of dozens of violations. It was a desperate attempt to crush him with financial ruin and strip away the community's joy. The president of the HOA carried herself like a general going to battle. She had spent nights drafting documents, contacting attorneys, and plotting strategies. To her, this was no longer about rules or property values, it was personal. She believed the homeowner had embarrassed her, mocked her authority, and weakened the board's control. To her, the lights represented rebellion, and rebellion had to be destroyed. But the homeowner was ready. He had anticipated the attack and prepared for it in silence. Weeks earlier, as the display grew larger, he had kept records of every encounter with the board, every letter, every fine, every attempt to intimidate him. He knew the HOA would not stop, and he knew that his defense had to be airtight. And beyond paperwork, he had something far more powerful, the community itself. Neighbors who once feared the board had now found their voice. They stood beside him, ready to testify, ready to donate, ready to fight. The lights had become a symbol of their freedom, a declaration that joy could not be outlawed. Even those who had once silently obeyed now realized they wanted change. That night, as the HOA prepared to deliver its ultimatum, the homeowner prepared something else. The display, already larger than anyone could imagine, had one final trick hidden away, something he had saved for the climax. The evening began as usual. Crowds gathered, the music played, and the lights danced across the house. Children's faces glowed with excitement, and parents smiled at the wonder of it all. But in the shadows, the board members waited, clutching their documents ready to strike. They planned to interrupt the event, to deliver their threats in front of everyone, to reclaim control with a show of force. When the moment came, they marched forward. The president raised her hand, demanding attention, waving papers like weapons. The crowd grew tense, sensing the confrontation. The joyful atmosphere dimmed as the board tried to seize the stage. But before they could speak, the homeowner flipped a hidden switch. The sky above exploded with light. Fireworks shot into the air, bursting into dazzling colors that rained down over the neighborhood. The music shifted into a triumphant finale, booming through the speakers as if announcing victory. And then, the final piece of the display revealed itself. Across the front of the house, a massive array of lights synchronized to form words. Thousands of bulbs spelled out a message that lit the entire street. Merry Christmas to all, from the neighborhood, not the HOA. The crowd erupted in cheers. Laughter, clapping, and whistles filled the night. Cameras flashed as news crews captured the dramatic reveal. Social media live streams spread instantly, showing thousands online the moment the HOA's authority collapsed under the weight of pure joy. The president froze. The board members stared, their papers suddenly meaningless. Every eye in the neighborhood was not on them, but on the lights. Every cheer drowned out their threats. Every camera immortalized their defeat. They had been outmaneuvered not with anger, but with celebration. The HOA's power shattered that night. Their threats no longer mattered. The homeowners' meticulous planning ensured that every violation they claimed had already been disproven, documented, or neutralized. Their authority crumbled under the weight of public opinion, community unity, and viral attention. In the weeks that followed, the story spread across the country. News anchors told the tale of the house that defied the HOA. Online videos of the display reached millions, sparking debates about freedom, control, and the absurdity of petty rules. Strangers from other states mailed letters of support. Donations poured in to help fight any lingering legal battles, though most never materialized. The HOA board, while once feared, was left humiliated. Several members resigned, unable to withstand the public ridicule. The president clung to her position, but her power was gone. The community no longer feared her. Neighbors who had once whispered in silence now openly criticized the board, demanding reforms, demanding freedom. And as winter turned to spring, something remarkable happened. For the first time in years, the neighborhood began to feel alive. Families decorated their yards again, flowers in bright colors, playful lawn ornaments, small touches of personality that had once been forbidden. The beige uniformity cracked, replaced by individuality and pride. The homeowner never claimed to be a hero. He hadn't set out to destroy the HOA. All he wanted was to bring back a little joy, a little light in the darkness. But in doing so, he had exposed the emptiness of the rules and the futility of control. His house had become more than just a display. It had become a symbol. On the next Christmas Eve, the lights returned, brighter than ever. This time, the HOA did not fight. They could not. The board had learned that no rulebook, no fine, no threat could extinguish the spirit of a community once it found its voice. And so, the neighborhood that had once been trapped in silence now glowed with light. Not just from one house, but from many. Decorations lined rooftops, music played in the streets, and families gathered together without fear. The battle between one homeowner and an oppressive board had ended not with destruction, but with victory for joy, freedom, and community. The HOA had tried to ban Christmas lights. Instead, they had created the brightest Times Square in suburbia, and they could never take it back.